Today we're going to be discussing how they're flat out lying to you about the job market. So we're hearing that the US economy is growing faster than expected and inflation is cooling. So the media is very positive about that. But from what we're seeing in January, people lost their job at a faster pace than we've seen in years. There was a 136% increase in layoffs.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys are paying attention to this, but if I did a podcast with Jeff Snyder, and the messaging from the Labor Department is inconsistent. So what's really happening and what they're reporting could be different, and there's a lot of people actually talking about this right now. So I would just encourage you to go look for yourself. But I went and did a little research here. It looked to me like there were for sure over 300,000 jobs. People got laid off last year. And I'm talking about, this is last year, by the way. And I'm going to also talk about 2024 because they've actually even said this is what we're anticipating for 2024. But last year was Amazon 10 grand, Alphabet 12 grand, a big company called Yellow, which is trucking, 30,000, CVS 5, Microsoft 10, Meta, Zuckerberg 21,000, Salesforce 8,000. So these are big companies, obviously. But what's interesting is that they're not all tech. So I think people are kind of pointing to tech, as you know, but they're not all tech. And the ones that have said that they're going to lay off this year. By the way, this is all on the internet. You guys go look at this. Estee Lauder, not tech, 3,100. Citigroup, the first bank at least to say 20,000 people. Macy's, 2,300. We already knew about that. UPS, 12,000. Microsoft 2, PayPal 2, Xerox, is a percentage. So these aren't all tech. And I think that what's happening is, I don't know, Main Street, things going on Main Street seem to be a little bit different from what's actually being reported from Wall Street.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, they're not all tech jobs. And even in the tech, categories, they aren't the tech jobs. So UPS laid off 12,000 workers, which was 2.5% of its workforce. And what's interesting is a lot of those jobs were contract and manager roles. So a lot of these companies, they hire too many people and they're trimming the fat, right? And as you know, sometimes when you have too many managers managing a manager managing a manager, those aren't the people that are income producing. Those are just kind of extra fat that companies are getting rid of.
Yeah, and I think what people need to understand is, what does all this mean and why is it important? Okay, well, I'll tell you. How do we relate to all this information in real estate terms? Because we are a real estate channel. Well, obviously, if you're a landlord, it's a problem because you now have people that are getting laid off. If you are trying to sell something, like a home, let's say, then you have less and less people, of course, that can buy that home. And you even have potentially less people that can pay rent. But what I really want you to see is this. And this was an article that came out. And it says mortgage rates jumped back over 7% as the stronger economic data rolls in. And what they're saying is this. After January unemployment came in much higher than expected, listen to this, rates then moved higher Monday. And even then, again, a monthly manufacturing report came in high as well. Okay, so it does matter. These statistics and this data matters because when people see high unemployment and they start to see these numbers creep up, if you're a bank, you're going to pull back. You're going to pull back on your lending, and higher rates mean that they think there's more risk. So that's actually what you need to keep watching. That's why everybody's like, well, why are you talking about unemployment numbers? This is precisely why. Because people pay rent, they buy things, and the banks are looking at this as their risks, right?
And I think it's interesting, some of these comments. So Len said that he heard most of the job gains were from part-time jobs. And I believe that, to be true as well. And, people are needing to work more jobs, or if somebody gets laid off from one job, maybe they get two part-time jobs to try to recoup that.
Yeah, yeah, and then of course you've got. I mean, we've been talking about side hustles, but people are working from home, but they also, what my experience has been that the last few years, people are seeing that their wage growth is not keeping up with the economy, and they can't keep up financially, and so they've been exploring side hustles and side things, and the work from home thing is here to stay. I'm telling you guys, like we did a big thing on with the commercial real estate guys on the office buildings and the shadow vacancy. Shadow vacancy is significant. And what does that mean? So this weekend, I was sitting with a guy at a wrestling match actually, and he said he has an office building in San Francisco and one in Phoenix, and his rent on both of them is $1 million a year. And he's like, nobody's going there. Like, but he goes, I signed the leases like right before the shutdown. So he's been paying $1 million a year, if you can imagine that, on these office leases. And so that's called shadow vacancy. Yeah, and so people are actually, he said, my people aren't coming back to work. I don't need that kind of space anymore.
So it is interesting though, because the Wall Street Journal reported that 90% of companies have a return to office plan in 2024,
Yeah.
but they're leveraging that to get rid of their employees. So I even know my brother's employer, is calling everyone back to the office on a hybrid schedule, 3 days a week. Now they might not need as big of an office, but I think that, because they're cutting their workforce, they're really relying on productivity, and people aren't productive at home. So I do believe there is not going to be a straight work from home program for most companies.
Yeah, I think it depends on the company, and I agree. And this particular company was predominantly salespeople, and that's a little bit different. But you're right. I think even my company, we've got a hybrid. We have people that can definitely work from home just fine. And but I like them in the office for our corporate culture. So you're still going to see that, but you're not going to see the amount of space. No, you're not going to need that kind of space. As you guys know, I own office buildings. So I just sold an office building, and what we saw, this is me, this is not something I'm reading, is people would go from 10,000 feet to 3,000 feet, or 15,000 or 20,000 feet down to 2,500 or 5,000 feet. So they need less. They still want a corporate office, but they need less because hybrid, if you have one person and they're coming in 2 to 3 days a week, now that's two people. So you just halved your office space need just from doing a hybrid. So there's all kinds of things happening. Also, the shared workspace is another one, right?
Yeah, people aren't necessarily getting a full office anymore. It's
Correct.
more,
Right.
work from your laptop. And we're seeing a lot of that. And, I think it's important to understand that companies, for those that are employees too, is they're focusing on the revenue generating positions right now. So a lot of, the cuts that were made, the CEOs came out and, they said that they hired too many people, business was booming, they're preparing for leaner times. So if you're an employee, you need to make sure that you're participating in the revenue in some way in order to have job security.
Yeah, and guys, I want you to be clear on one thing that doesn't show up on any of these lists, except for Citigroup. No, there's no financial companies on this list. There's no banks on this list. There's no mortgage companies on this list. There's no real estate companies, realtor companies on this list. There's no title companies on this list. Okay. But I know, because I'm in the business, that those industries have gotten clobbered with higher rates. So, this is it's easy to pick on these big companies, but I'm telling you guys, Main Street is operating very differently. We're talking about companies that are 100 or 50 people. They're cutting way back, and so we really are going to see, this is going to be the year of layoffs, because the reason why is the employers are burdening the cost. So wages have gone up, cost of insurance for the employees have gone up. The cost to have an employee has gone up. And so what has not gone up is revenue. So in most cases, so if revenue stays flat or declines, then so does need to be the expenses, and that's the bottom line. Just like you would do in your own personal home. If this is the same thing as wage growth. Not having much wage growth and your expenses going higher than your wage growth. If you're an individual and you're getting a paycheck and it costs you more to live, it's the same thing with an employee or employer. Sorry. So employer has the same issues. So, if income's flat and expenses are growing, then you have to take a look at whatever that is. It could be AI. It could be hiring 2 people instead of 1 and doing. So you don't have the health insurance issue, and there's a zillion things. There's contract. People are going to contract. I know sometimes they're changing salary structures to commissions. Sometimes they're just saying we can't employ you for 40 hours. They're going to need to go 30. Whatever it is, the employer's going to have to do what it has to do to meet that. So as expenses have gone up at the household, they're now going up into the workspace too.
And I want you guys to all check out what Darpan said. He listed a bunch of companies and how much they cut. I think that was really interesting on the comments.
What does it say? Can you say real quick?
There's a lot.
Well, just hit some.
PayPal,
Yep.
UPS, Microsoft, Twitch, Unity Software, Discord, Wayfair, Riot Games, Duolingo, Rent the Runway, eBay, BlackRock, Citigroup, and Google. I also want to point out that Bank of America just announced that all their employees have to come back in the office full time and they have 2 weeks to comply.
Wow.
The reason they're doing that, though, is it's an easy way to figure out who to cut. If you need to make cuts and people moved away or they don't want to come back, then don't come back. But it's an easy way for them to start to weed out people because they know, that they need to do that. And I think it's interesting, too, most of these CEOs were interviewed as to why they're cutting back. And some of them gave the normal answer, business is struggling, we have to make cuts. But a big word that keeps coming into the conversation is productivity initiative and to simplify operations. So as we were saying before, productivity has to go up. They're cutting employees and they're trying to increase productivity and they're trying to simplify operations. So get rid of some of that middle management. And they're really focusing on people that are growing revenue or key people in the company.
Yeah, I correct. I think I have, as you guys know, I'm in a lot of different organizations that have a lot of different businesses. One's EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. The other's with YPO, which I'm also in, Young Presidents Organization. And so I'm constantly talking to business owners, and we're all struggling with many people are struggling with the same kinds of things. And so we're looking at crazy stuff like outsourcing our accounting to India, like those kinds of things. Like those are real things in companies that are really that people are discussing because that some of the accounting is necessary, obviously, and you start to look at AI. How does AI affect everything? Well, I don't know. Just look at the airline industry. Just look at making reservations for a hotel or a restaurant. You used to have front desk and people answering the phones. I own a resort, as you guys know. Well, it's all done online now. People show up and it's everything's handled right there online, and then they just have a great experience when they get there. So the front desk stuff is starting to go away. And it's the same thing with leasing, virtual leasing and AI and chatbots and all that kind of stuff. It's all moving that way. And obviously the technology is sitting there, but people are starting to look at it because they're like, wow, my costs are going up and my profitability is going down. So what are some of the things that I have at my disposal to be efficient, still provide great customer service, but at the same time reduce my cost? That's what's happening with employers.
Yeah, and Daspar said he's in insurance and just got laid off, and Ivan said he's in healthcare and he didn't get laid off, but they laid off a bunch of people too. All companies are trimming that middle fat, and I think it's interesting. And Michael said something interesting. He said, "I wonder if the banks calling people back in the office hold commercial paper and are hoping they can influence others to do the same."
Yeah, very possible. I think If you really take a look at, guys, one of the biggest real estate opportunities, I think, in the next 10 years is going to be buying these corners, these banks. These banks will have all the best corners in the world, pretty much. But who walks in now with their deposits? Yeah, right? Like, I know you do. I know you do. It pains me to call you old, but people, now you take a photo of your check front and back, and boom, it's in your account. And I think that. The banker. I actually go into my bank every once in a while, but man, I'll tell you what. There's probably 30 offices in this bank. There's a whole private area, and then of course there's the teller area. There's never anybody in there. I mean, I roll right up. There's one or two cars maybe, and they're all my age. like I don't know. My kids were laughing at me the other day because I pulled out a checkbook. Then they started laughing, and I'm like, "Hey, knock it off." They're like, "You're old." I'm like, "Yeah." And they go, "We don't even go into banks." So the point is not to make fun of me, but the point is that these corners. Why do people need corners? The best corners, man. I'll tell you what. At some point, those are going to be absorbed and redeveloped as well.
Absolutely. And what I think is interesting too is, employers are starting to get their power back, right? You know, Employees for a while, there was a lot of social media stuff going on through the pandemic of quiet quitting, which was when you don't really work that hard at your job and you don't really care, and your employer keeps you and you keep a paycheck. Well, those people are going to get fired. You obviously had the Great Resignation where people were just job hopping all the time.
Yep.
There's actually a trend on TikTok right now that's "come with me to get fired." So it shows
Yeah,
people
I
getting
saw
ready
that.
to get fired.
Crazy.
But now the employer, because the employee had the power since about 2020 on, now the employer is getting the power back, and they want people that are dedicated to the company. They want people that are productive, and they're going to start looking at that. They're looking at people that got overpaid because, as Ken said, a lot of people, employers were paying whatever to get people to work over the pandemic. So now there's certain people that they might look in their firm are overpaid and want to get rid of them. And these credentialed workers, these white collar workers, are at the most risk because blue collar workers are typically automatically productive because they're doing manual labor. So they're automatically a productive asset to a company, where the white collar worker is the one now that could get offshored or the fat could get cut off.
Oh, I love that too. Honestly, that's how I grew up, guys. Like, my dad was a journeyman plumber, and I grew up in the plumbing, electrical, doing drywall, all that kind of stuff. With tool belts and all that. And I'll tell you, I love it. I mean, I use handyman. We have a couple of them. And they're phenomenal, but their rates are going up, and it should. They're hard-working people, and they're going to sail right through. It's that white collar, literally. The middle management is the one that's probably going to be most in jeopardy.
Well, and it's interesting because I've seen this too. So Ivan said the new generations coming are also much more demanding on how much they want to make and what hours and schedules they want to work. It seems like they have a lack of initiative. And you have to remember those young workers that started or were newer to working in 2020 to 2023, they're used to being demanding. They're used to saying, I want to make this much. I want to work from home these days. I want flexible, time off. I want all this stuff because they had the power. So I think they're for the biggest wake up call when all of these, job layoffs and things are happening.
Yeah, and you can't blame them. They just don't have any perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I first started into the workforce, I was interviewing and, getting, had no's, and, there were rejections. And I think that's part of the process. It's like anything when there's little employees and lots of work, the employee is going to, they're going to have the leverage. So now it's just swinging the other way. So I think it's good, obviously, because, there needs to be a good, healthy balance. And my experience has been that really, really good employees are going to be just fine. They're going to be paid just whatever they command and whatever they need. And so it just boils back to the basics again, where if they're really, really good at what they what they can do, and of course they add value and they actually make the company money, then
Mhm.
they will forever be in, working. It doesn't matter where, right? They're just going to walk in and say, "This is what I can do for you." That's what an employer wants. It's the ones that are sitting there that think that they're moving the needle for the employer, and they may or may not be, right? And so they have to be relevant.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note, the Fed meets again in March. This is what they want. They had talked about lowering rates. Right now, there's a 34% chance they're going to lower in March. Nobody thinks they're going to raise. But what you have to understand is they're not going to lower until the job market starts to suffer, right? So they want layoffs. They want the unemployment rate to go up. They need that to cool down inflation more. And so they're not, you know, everyone wants lower rates and nobody wants layoffs, and they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah. So just to be clear, the Fed believes that stable unemployment rate should be in the mid fours. That's what they're, just Google it, you'll see. That's what they say. Whether don't argue with me, argue with them. So that's what. And right now we're at 3.7. So what they say is a low unemployment rate means that there's wage inflation. That's what it means. So according to the Fed. So what they're saying is they're going to drive unemployment. So these unemployment numbers could go up, and it seems like they are going up. But I don't know for people that I know, what we're really trying to do is just be profitable. Ours is an inflation problem. We've got our expenses are higher, and the revenue is not. So you have to look inward, and you have to do it that way. So I think that when income's off, revenue's off, and things aren't growing, like what solves this? Sales and revenue. Period. Like
Mm-hmm.
when a company's making a lot of money and it's growing and expanding, and everybody's that's when bonuses are doled out. That's when increases are doled out. That's when, corporate dinners and corporate retreats and all that stuff is done. So all of that stuff happens when a company is being progressive and it's actually making money. When it's flatlined or pulling back, then the opposite happens.
So I think somebody asked in the comments, and I think it's important because you run a pretty big company, real estate company. So what are you seeing boots on the ground, employment wise, in your company and applicants?
We're actually seeing quite a few applicants, and we have a full time recruiter in our company. We have 300 people now, and he's busy, man. Like we just have one person in charge, but he's busy, 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 and I think that there's some great people on the market. So, and when there's disruption, to be quite honest, that's when the best people are on the market. So, for example, when UPS lays off, what is it, 12,000 people, I can assure you there's a big number of very, very, very good people in that number. And now they're going to be moved around, and so there's other businesses that will be able to benefit from those folks. And so, that's the other side of it. And so we're seeing that it was much harder before. The reason we have a recruiter, by the way, I never had a recruiter. I'm 24 years in business. We've had a recruiter for 4 years. Why would I need a recruiter? Well, because I wasn't getting a lot of folks coming, so he was out looking, and he's on LinkedIn. He's out looking for employees for certain positions as each of my departments need them. We've got a marketing department, an accounting department, a finance department, property management, asset management, construction. We have all those businesses inside of our company, and each one has different needs at different times. And so,
But
uh,
But we have seen a massive increase in applicants. Like during the
yeah,
pandemic, getting one or
correct.
two applications. Now we're getting
Right.
hundreds within like a
Yeah,
couple of
right,
days.
right. And I think the other thing that's up right now is I was watching Jeff Snyder's videos. His hours worked is down. Like people don't want to work 40 hours. That's another factor, and I think that's something to watch. Is you know that you know people aren't just doing 40, 50, 60 hours. It doesn't look to me like. If, at least that's what the stats show. So,
Right.
which is fine. I'm not saying people should burn themselves out and work at that level, but I'm just saying that that's significantly down, and that might be as a result of part time.
But do you think that all this could change as companies start to cut and jobs start to be harder to find, and those key workers that are working more and are more dedicated and are coming into the office are going to be the ones that keep their jobs?
It's very possible. I think you said it kind of earlier, where if if when employers' revenue goes flat or negative. Let's just pick on a mortgage company. I mean, we know plenty of them, right? We know plenty of folks that are in the mortgage business. Well, where's their revenue? Their revenue comes from refinances and purchases of new homes. Let's say those are two big spots. Okay, well that hasn't happened. 2023 was a horrible year for a mortgage company. Okay, so mortgage company that maybe had 50, 60, 75 people. I'm talking about processors, underwriters, all that kind of stuff. Doesn't. And so, the revenue stopped or significantly reduced. Now, did they shut their doors? No. Could it come back? Yeah, of course. But it contracts and expands based on the revenue from the employer. So you start with that. You have to look at that. If you're in the construction business, you're for sure very, very lean right now, right? If you're obviously relying on any kind of commercial real estate commissions or any kind of brokerage or anything like that. We had the National Multi-Housing Council last week. Story after story after story after story where these brokerage companies, these brokers that were making a lot of money in this last run that we had a horrible year in 2023, and there's a lot of movement too. That's the other thing. There's like, oh, this company, I'm not making as much, so I'm gonna move around. So that's not a bad thing, and so they're starting to reposition, and but it all starts with revenue. And when employers' revenue slows down or goes flat, their expenses are up. You have to take a look at how to be more efficient. Oddly enough, like, do I need a receptionist? It gets to that point. Do I need a receptionist? And can it be done automated? Do I need an accounting department this big? I don't know. Do I need a marketing department this big? All those things as an employer you take a look at. You have to take a look at.
And are they working hard?
Yeah.
Are they?
And I would say most of them are working hard. I really mean that. I don't. But the issue is it's a revenue problem, right? If most of them are. The question is, if you got two hardworking people in marketing, and you get a big hit on the income side, can you do it with one person?
Right, absolutely. And I think Harry said something interesting. He said employers are insisting on people coming back to the office because those that resist, they can fire for cause, and then they don't have to do necessarily a severance and all of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I never thought of that, but yep, that does make sense. I think that's a great way to force the issue, put a deadline on it, and then the employer, it's on the employees. It's employees' job, which it always was in the beginning, right? They just had a nice little gift.
Yep. And Casey's asking, does your concern for layoffs change your forecast for residential real estate price reductions?
Oh yeah, I think it's a really good point. Of course. Layoffs affect everything. Layoffs affect people that can rent. They affect people that can buy. And so, yes, all of that stuff is just going to compound. It's going to hammer sellers even more. The reason why, that's why I brought this up. That's why I actually printed this for today. It's literally mortgage rates jump back over 7. Now, obviously, and why is that? That's because the banking, which is also in trouble, believes that there's more risk as unemployment goes up. There's more risk, so that's it.
I think Bruce made a really good point. He says, watch travel. When travel starts to decline, it's a leading indicator the economy is declining. And he also said, don't expect much in job declines until after the election.
All right, so watch Airbnb too.
Yeah. Well, travel's a great one because that definitely is the most luxurious expense people don't need to do.
Yeah, that is true. That's you look at things that are discretionary. So I look at Netflix, I look at cable, I look at gym memberships, I look at travel, I look at those kinds of things. People pull back on things that they consider to be discretionary, I guess, and their core ones, which are mortgage or rent, let's say, or car payment if they have one, and food. Right, you start with that, and then and then probably dating or relationships are up in there somewhere. Those are important.
Uh, Aaron is asking a good question. They're asking, how do we know if we are actually seeing job growth or if it's all part-time work or other
Yeah,
factors?
I know it's super complicated.
The
That's
government
above
doesn't like
it's
you to
above my
know.
pay it's above my pay grade. I don't know. Like I've been trying to dig into this data, guys. It's like there'll be two different reports for the for one report. Like I'm like they're conflicting. That's what that Jeff Snyder video was fantastic, where it's talking about the unemployment report, saying two different things, same report. So I don't know. I'm trying to dig in myself, but it something's going on here, guys. Like there's something's bubbling under the surface, and I just believe it to be as simple as inflation is now hitting corporate America pretty hard. Expenses
Mhm.
are up everywhere, and they're starting to take a look at their profitability. At the end of the day, nobody's going to have a business that doesn't make money. Why would you have a business?
Right. And then I think too, the government purposely wants it to be confusing, just like inflation data, so that they can manipulate it however they want to manipulate it in order to be positive or negative.
Yeah, it's changed a bunch. I did a couple of videos on this a while ago, so I was a little more in tune with it. But um, you know, it's definitely going to affect. As I said, we're moving toward a renter nation, and
Yeah.
there's some things that are really super clear to me. One is housing prices are not going to go down, and rental prices are going to be flat for about a year and a half, and then they're going to go up like crazy. And
So I know
there's
you
Yep, go
So
ahead.
I know you think that, but I want to challenge you because you mentioned that when somebody had asked, why will this affect, the housing market? You said it would affect it. So if you're saying that housing prices, you don't see them going down, how do you see it affecting it?
So I guess it depends on what I mean by affecting it, right? For me, it'll be less affordable.
Okay.
Yeah,
See, I think a lot of people thought you meant the other way. So
No,
I think that,
well, right. So I think of the consumer. When we're talking about this, I think of the people, not necessarily housing. I mean, housing is going to do its thing. We're talking about here is layoffs. And there's going to be less people that can afford stuff, and
right.
it's gonna increase that bottom percent, which is the ones that need it the most.
Hmm.
We're talking about that the service worker or the entry level stuff. Those are the folks that are in the crosshairs of this inflation and the higher gas prices and higher food prices, higher rent prices, higher interest rates, higher credit card, all that stuff. That's a result of that's hitting that, call it the bottom, I don't know, whatever, 20, 30%, whatever that number is. Those are the folks that are going to get hurt the worst. And these layoffs, I'm not saying everybody's in that category, but when there's this many people looking for, it's a supply demand thing, just like in real estate. You have a lot of people competing for a job. Their employer's going to pay less.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So I wanted to jump into our Ask Ken question. So this is our premium Ken Pro membership, go to kenmcelroy.com/join-now. Steve, please put that in the comments. And we answer all your questions either live or by email. So Nick's asking, I currently have a successful insurance agency. I also own a few residential rental properties. I just got my real estate license. How much time should I put into learning how to sell real estate when I already have a successful insurance agency?
I don't think you should learn how to sell real estate at all. I'll be honest. If you have an insurance agency, I think you
Right.
should. I think you should learn how to buy and invest, and use your business acumen to own them instead of sell them. So, there's nothing wrong with getting your license. I mean, Danielle just got her license, and she's going to have that as a nice little side hustle herself. She never had it. She studied over the summer and decided she wanted to get it because she wanted the education, number one. But also, from time to time, when she does sell something, but primarily, when you say the reason you got yours was to look for deals.
Yeah, so I can look for
Yeah.
deals and I don't have to pay the agent fees
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that would be the reason, in my opinion. I mean, especially if you have if I were in your position, I would scale your insurance company because it's something you already have.
More real estate.
Yeah, yeah, and then but get the knowledge. There's the real estate license is hard to get, and it's really 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 good information. And also, you're in a new network. You probably get a bunch of insurance work, But I would look at it as an investor and instead of I mean, no disrespect to the realtors, but you're working for tips.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. It's commissioned.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
it's not a long-term deal.
And make sure those listening on YouTube too, you ask some questions. I'm going to pull one or two from there. Hector is asking from Ken Crow. Hi, Ken. Have you ever considered using a rent to buy contract when purchasing an 8-unit complex to avoid triggering higher property taxes? The seller is proposing this to mitigate the impact of the deal's financials, but I'm curious about your thoughts on this approach. Alternatively, should I be patient and continue searching for other deals?
It's a good question. I don't know that a rent to buy contract would actually mitigate property tax. Property tax is based on typically, well, different states or places are different around the way they're valued. But traditionally, a sale is a sale is a sale, and the property tax, the assessor's looking at that amount, and there's a tax rate, et cetera. Now, rent to buy or rent to own is a great strategy. If you can get a seller, keep in mind, a lot of sellers right now they're forced to do this because if they're sitting on an 8-plex and they want a higher price and rates are 7, if they can offer you something at 5, that's a good deal for you, but they're probably going to want maybe a little bit more on the price. So, if you're just renting it, I guess I don't fully understand how that would work as an owner, because a traditional, rent to own or seller carry type of scenario would be an actual transaction that you pay over time. Unless you did a rent to own where, a part of that rent would go toward that, but you don't know which direction prices are going to go or rates are going to go or anything like that. So, but I don't know if it's a strategy for property tax at all, if that makes sense. It does. It doesn't make sense to me.
Right, exactly. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.
Hey, see you guys. Always enjoy it. Thanks for the question.